Although the stream looks healthy right now, I'm going to need a viewer's perspective in order to figure out if it is in healthy condition this stream. Even though the feedback from the server is telling me that it can't support the resolution, even though it's still displaying at 720p.
One second.
You may have to manually adjust to 720p. I need to see the latency on this thing. And the feedback from my phone does not help, so I need the latency check on someone else to know feedback. So post your comment or your opinion. Literally get no response again from the IR spotlight. Yeah, it doesn't turn on no more. It applied one time during battle, but it doesn't want to apply itself again. So the infrared spotlight is sort of broken.
Attention to the designated grid square.
The reason why infrared spotlights were designed so that you could blind the enemy whether they're using thermals or not. gotta be kidding me. At least on the upside, it'll blow out his gun barrel. You've got to be kidding me. It still has freaking ERA? What are you doing? Yeah, look at that. Serious button delay on all of that. Here, what? Here, hey.
The enemy is winning. We've got to counterattack.
What a weird game. The infrared spotlight doesn't work, and if I push the button, it'll let me turn on the night vision, but the infrared spotlight is always broken. But why does it work for everyone else? That's what I don't goddamn get. If I go into a shitty freaking test drive, it'll pull it out and let it fly out. Or it's gonna freaking jumble its freaking... I'm just gonna say it like how it is. If I do a test drive, it'll gargle the tank's sack, but if I don't do a test drive, it won't even do that. Much less I don't even want to turn on a single vehicle. So why does everyone else's infrared work, but on my side it's always broken? Swear to God, this game is freaking gargling the sack of whoever it wants at this point. See? That T-10A on the other side of the stupid hill is literally gargling it. Oh man, it's a T-90. What a sad view. Here, I'll give you a little bit of osmosis, Jones. You want that? Come over here. The game wants to gargle your nuts some more. Hey, let me break your sensors so that way the missiles don't fly away the other direction. Ironically, knocking the sensors out does work. Gargle my tank. What goddamn gives? He wants to give him the infrared light sensor on both of his stupid cheek armor lights, but he doesn't want to give me even the time of day. No, screw you, game. What the hell is going on? You turn on for everyone else the infrared light sensor, and these things got infrared light sensors as well, but why is this one all blacked out? See? What the HE double goddamn hockey sticks? You can't turn those on for me? You'll turn it on here, but you don't want to honor it in freaking arcade. But for that lame T90, you want to gargle his tracks, basically, and give him the opportunity. Like, that makes no fucking sense at all. Like, none at all. So you're gonna gargle his nuts, but you're not gonna freaking give me even the time of day. You're gonna gargle the T-72A on the other side's nuts, but you're not gonna give my tank the time of day. What kind of BS is that? Oh, he's gonna gargle some nuts. Fucking gargle smurf, I swear to God. I bet it's not even gonna honor the fact that this thing has a freaking infrared spotlight on it too while it's at it. It's probably gonna say it doesn't work. I think this pile of junk even has night vision. But then again, I think this game is screwing me over when it comes to my save data on the player format. Yeah, I'm literally down one row on parts for this thing. Again. The side tank already had its night vision, and now it doesn't. And what's worse, insult to injury. Night vision, and then it wants to give you a night vision device upgrade. Now screw off with your thermal optics. That should come included. I don't see you subtracting that from the standard T80B. Oh, you even separated it even after that happened. Oh, that's fucking classic War Thunder. More or less, this is definitely depressing. In fact, I have a serious goddamn question. Why does ZSU 37-2 have an infrared optic? That's literally a freaking infrared optic sitting on top of the stupid anti-aircraft gun. Why does it have an infrared optic out of all the damn vehicles? Look at that. That's an infrared optic. Infrared optic. Classic standard infrared optic. This is a very dark red lens, along with the red lens on the second light in the back. Infrared optic, dark lens, darkened red lens. The infrared optic lighting. So why is that there if it cannot be used? Why does that exist? Where's the night vision for this thing? Where's the thermals? This thing doesn't have any of that. Yet you're gonna give it a red light. Who uses a red light bulb in the middle of a combat zone? It isn't gonna show nothing. If anything, it's gonna blend in the person even further. Here, let me blend them in with a little shade of red. Ugh, my back. See that? 2 red lights. And where the light is coming from in the commander optic, the infrared light is on top of the commander's sight, not in the commander's sight. This displaying the infrared lighting on the commander's sight when it's actually above the commander's sight. And I think it's also inside, but yeah, it's a bit out of place. And then the gunner's view of their infrared optic that sits there, it's not right there on that positioning. It's that ridiculous light you see right there. Imagine having to travel reverse this fast. I think the max speed be honest, I think it was 42 miles per hour. Or 43. Can't remember. No, it's probably 44. Imagine throwing it into full reverse and just flying and then literally ramping up the side of a hill. I can imagine that. Just keep reversing. And the sounds you're hearing is likely the reality check coming in. You know, for whenever a vehicle or tank travels too fast and the treads weren't designed to go that fast, that sound you're hearing is actually a realistic sound of the treads tearing themselves apart. Because most of the times, a tank isn't designed to go about 50 miles an hour in reverse on tank treads, much less let alone in drive. The fastest I've seen tanks go with tank treading would be about maybe 38 miles an hour before something happened. Then they had the Challenger 2, where they drove that thing going max speed but slammed on the brakes. It took 2 takes to make it look like it stopped, because in the first take they had to scrub the people off the street. And the ironic part was, those weren't even soldiers in the first take, or in the second take.
The target has been destroyed!
However, the soldiers were there in the second take, but they weren't in the image.
It serves him right.
Oh, they even told me his shell shattered.
Got him!
How does a 122 millimeter armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding sabot shatter?
On target!
Unrealistic. I'd be like, oh, it's shattered, non-penetration. No, it went through.
Yes, a hit!
Because I'm pretty sure if a tank got hit with a 122 millimeter round, if it says non-penetration, that'd be a fat load of crap, and definitely a lie.
Got him!
Because no matter how you looked at it, and I would say it like this, no matter how you look at the vehicle, doesn't matter what armor it has, how thick it is, it's gonna punch through. Although most people will say it went nowheres and the bullet did absolutely nothing, the reality in the world is that the minute that cheekbone armor got slammed, a chain reaction of things happened to the vehicle, mechanically and internally. Armor-piercing, discarding sabot rounds. Very dangerous. Indeed. Can they punch a hole through things? Yes, they can. But take a look at the projectile mass of this particular bullet. 5.4 kilograms. We'll take a look at the heat round. 18.4 kilograms. And the APCBC, 25.1 kilograms in weight. 27.2 kilograms of weight. The lightest round is 5.4 kilograms. At a caliber of 122 millimeters. And then take a look at the armor-piercing, fin stabilized at 321, 3.6 kilograms of weight. 321 millimeters of armor penetration at 1800 meters a second. Then you have 1780 with 440. It's a bit slower. Then you have 1760 at 425. The middle ground round. Middle ground? Somewhat. And basically light speed. 905. 19 kilograms. 19 kilogram projectile mass at a 125 millimeter gun, and it travels 0.5, like literally 5 meters faster, I believe. 850. 850. 9. Let's take a look at this. 122. APDS. 5.4 kilograms. 361. And it goes to 320 minimum, 2000. 18.4. The other one weighed heavier, but this one has a less heavier weight and goes at 920 meters a second. This one goes 950 meters a second at 25.1. This one goes 865 meters a second and an explosive mass of 3 kilograms. The T-10M's ammunition travels subsequently a bit faster than the T-64A, or it looks like. In comparison, 850, 850, 905, 1800, 1780, 1760. This is on fin stabilized ammunition. 1620 is slower, but maintains 320 millimeters of pen at the minimum range. Armor piercing fin stabilized. Take a look at the massive decrease in power. In the first round, travels 1800 meters a second, but where does all that energy go? Subsequently, the energy is completely depleted. Even though it's traveling 1800 meters a second, why it's bleeding off so much energy makes no sense. At 2000 meters, it gives you 249 millimeters of armor penetration. This one gives you 400 base minimum. This one gives you 380 at 2000 base minimum. This one starts out very fast, but bleeds off so much energy. This one starts off fast, but doesn't bleed off energy as badly. This one starts off fast and doesn't bleed off energy as bad. But this one starts off basically at like Mach 4 almost. Maybe like Mach 2, Mach 3. And this thing bleeds off so much energy by the time it's at 2000 meters that whatever it would hit would probably not even be damaged at best. It would probably hit and fly off in a random direction without even spiraling in, or it'd smash into whatever it is and get stuck like an arrow hitting a wooden post. Heat explosives will always give you the dimensional explosive radius of armor penetration. It will give you the same dimensions of armor penetration regardless of the distance. Unless you were trying to clip a target at over 2 miles away, then don't expect, well, similar results. Results may vary if you're trying to clip somebody from a mile away. Another thing people should know, never believe the stories people tell you about great tank snipers who use tanks to snipe targets from a great distance. Not everything you hear is true. 1415, 299. Let's take a look at the T10, 1620, not bad. This is still using a 100mm gun, smooth barrel. And armor piercing fin stabilized at 1430 with 335 and 260 minimum at 2,000 meters. Slight increase at the end of its length of power. 3PK-17M, 390 heat, meaning 390mm heat, traveling at 1085. This is faster than the T10, I think. Yep. So the T55A, 1415, muzzle velocity 1430, only a few millimeter difference. 880, that's the fastest smoke shell that I believe I've actually ever paid attention to. 1085, probably going to be one of the fastest heat shells I've ever seen in the game, because I don't think anything else travels faster than 1085. 887, 900 meters a second for an HE shell. It's not bad. Let's take a look at the T62. 1615, 285, 115mm. That was an odd caliber. 115, 1615 with 350. Then you got the 440 heat with 950 meters a second at 115. It's about 5mm, about 15mm more from 100. Then you got the T62 M1, 1060 heat. That's about 25 less from 1085 with the heat round. 500mm heat, more subsequent. 800 meters a second speed, high explosive. 370 meters a second for a rocket. 3BM22, 1600 meters a second, 420, 370 minimum, 386, 352, 3BM28. Although this one's projectile mass is slightly bigger. Oh man, the penetration values aren't worth it. You're better off with this one. The 3BM21 versus the 3BM28, which sheds off some of the weight for accuracy. So instead of being kind of roundish and fat in the front, it's more thin and traditional versus its earlier aged, fat, dart looking cousin. But the results will vary. I don't carry different ammunitions. Once I find an APDS round I like, I'll use it to the full extent. 905 heat, 850 AC, 1800. That's very fast. 321 all the way to 249, 3BM9. It's nice if you want to snipe a person from a distance because of the massive speed. You're better off with the 440. 3BM15 versus the 3BM22, which is kind of middle ground. But again, you're better off with the 3BM15 rounds. By the way, the 1983 mod apparently only adds a 16mm plate on the upper glacis versus the lower. So, yeah. And I'll literally point this out to you. You see that little thin square right here? That's all you get. This right here, this is all you're getting. Everything you're getting. That's all you are getting from this tank. That's all you're getting is this little 16mm plate, which was already initially installed on a T72A model. That's the only thing that changed for that time. Then you had T72B. I don't even want to test drive it. Let me click over here. Let me click on the customization. Pay attention to the armor. This is the composition right here of the armor. Pay close attention to it because this is the armor's composition. It says thickness is 60 millimeters. Do you really believe the thickness is 60 millimeters? The answer will shock you.
It is not.
There was already 60 millimeters of armor plating, plus the 16 millimeter plate that was already on the front of the T-72. So it's the initial 60 plus the 16, which has already been initially on the vehicle itself. So it should initially be for the front armor, frontal. ERA doesn't count. But overall, the initial weight value should be accordingly, because 80 on the side plus the 5 millimeter rubber fabric screens that I think are on the side as well. This is a 4 millimeter track. That ain't even freaking 85 either, man. Look at that. This is an 8 millimeter rubber screen. So it'll be 80. So this is 88 right here. 88, 88 for armor protection. 84, not 85. And on the rear, it's 4. This is 8, so 88 here on the side. 88 at the rear, the rubber fabric screen, which will definitely absorb some of the blow of the initial explosives. 20 on the underside, 70 on this last rear piece. So 70, and I don't understand this being 78 at the rear. Pretty close to the rear, I'd understand it being 78 millimeters of armor protection. But other than that,
It's not 135, 85, 45.
because the initial plate didn't change. The T-72A's initial design came with an already and supposedly variable thickness, but it's not variable thickness armor. The initial front plate on the front was already at like 60 millimeters. What's under the composition is that, because you got 60 on the top plus the 16 millimeter UPF plate, which was the added plate, this little thing. So it is 76 millimeters on top, because that's literally what it is. 76 millimeters on top, plus the 105 millimeters of ballistic textiles. So you got 76 plus 105, making it what? 76 plus 105, giving you 181 in the front, plus the rolled homogeneous armor. Genoous armor, Genois armor, I don't know. Point is 50 millimeters. You got 185 plus 50, then you got, like, what is it, 181? Let's see, 60 on the front plus 16, 76 plus the 105, so it's 181 plus 50 on the rear, which is the last armor plate, 50 millimeter on the last of the rear plate. So then that rear plate would basically be the 50 millimeters of extra added armor to the general composition of the entire armor plate design. So it's 50 plus 181, so then you put that in, 201, so it's 230, what, 235 or 231 millimeters of armor protection. Initially, this compositional ERA plate provides you, or composite armor plate, gives you 231 millimeters of armor protection. But the equivalent protection against the specified ammo is 400, literally 400, 500, 491. Oh, is it like 500 and something right around here? 514, 516. It's 545 at most. 3BM 15 or 48 should still pierce all the way to literally the back. And yes, the textiles were designed to catch it. See how it says just that? Like right there. Seems to just smash straight on through. Like technically this visor department you see right here is completely separate. Like this entire compartment right here doesn't all of a sudden decrease in mass. Like that's an entirely separate department. However, it doesn't treat it as such. So some of it is broken. So you got 231 millimeters of armor protection. Then on the underside you got supposedly variable thickness, rolled homogeneous armor. Yeah, I don't see the variable thickness, bro. I see only a quarter of that thing being covered. Like literally a quarter's worth of size of this underplate being covered. So like, then I'm gonna say like this right here is a 20 millimeter thick plate. That's thick, plus the initial 60, what is it, like 80 millimeters on the underside. So you got 80 plus 20. But it's gonna call it variable thickness armor, when it's actually just an 80 millimeter plate on the underside with a 20 millimeter plate, giving you 100 millimeters. And this 20 millimeter plate actually clamps on to the 20 millimeter underside. Which is the under armor. Initially, this just isn't a generally good setup. Russian tanks do have a lot of protection on them, however, they're not subsequent. Theoretically and literally in the composition, this would be an improvement, a mass improvement in such case. You got rolled homogeneous armor by 60 millimeters, 5 millimeter rubber in there so that it can absorb chemical rounds. You got rolled homogeneous armor at 3 millimeters, which will also set off any extra explosives or chain reactions that are in the ammunition fired, plus 18 millimeters of air, which is quite large when you think about it. You're talking about like an inch and a half of air space, so the rounds, explosive round, can spread out. Because heat rounds are technically a chemical reaction. Then you got rolled homogeneous at 3 millimeters to eat whatever chemical hits it. Then you got the rubber fabric screen of 5 millimeters behind the 3 to absorb any excess chemicals. Then you got the 60 millimeter of rolled homogeneous, whatever they call it, armor. Then you got the 10 millimeter radiation shielding to prevent any excess material from the heat round. Then you got rolled homogeneous armor at 50 millimeters. And that pretty much covers everything. Then you got the composite armor, combinations of reflective plates. This one was actually pretty good because reflective plates can absorb damage and basically, how you say, deflect damage, depressing the amount that you'll have to deal with. And this is just 240 to 180, so it's a 180 on the bottom, 180 millimeter block on the bottom, and a 240 millimeter rolled homogeneous armor block on top. So you got the 240 block on top and the 180 at the bottom. And these reflective plate design are very useful because it can definitely stop, catch, or shear off heat rounds. It could definitely stop, catch, and shear off heat rounds. The front of the block is approximately 600 millimeters thick from front to back, the mantlet block. From front to back, it's 600 millimeters. That means from this top skim at the top to the back, it's like 600, 220. That's going across, up from one corner to the other. 600 but 220 from front to back in general. The armor dimensions are very good. However, it is not so good at the same time. It was a good, decent design. Almost no flaws. Americans like to talk shit about the T90A's composition and calling it an upgraded T72. 65, 3, 18. Composition is the same as the T72 with the similar T72 chassis. I've seen two types of T90s in my entire existence in being alive. And one of them had a very, very good reverse gear. The composite armor. Roll homogeneous armor of 70 millimeters. Combined armor with reflective plates at 365. Roll homogeneous at 45. And 130 final set block, which would probably be right here. Right under this ERA is the 130 millimeters. The 45 is in between. And then you got the reflective plates, which likely have like maybe 8 to 20 millimeters of spacing between one another to absorb heat rounds. The explosive reactive armor, the equivalent protection against kinetic munitions is 120. But that's just the off chance that it'll ricochet the bullet or the round, or ricochet just a little bit to cause a ricochet effect to bounce. Chemical energy munitions, this will always set it off before it ever hits its target. So if you got 500 millimeter heat, don't expect it to go flying through, because the initial side armor on this vehicle, you got 20 right here, and you got 80 right there. So even if it did hit the ERA, even if it did hit, you'd be short a couple of millimeters to go straight through the armor. Whoever's idea was to make this part of the tank 20 millimeters is a moron. That should have been thicker, at least way thicker. The side plates should have been a lot thicker. So somebody should get fired for that one. You got 40, 20, you got a 40 millimeter rear plate, 40 millimeter cover, 20 millimeter cover, 5 millimeter, literally 5 millimeter like mesh screens, 70 millimeter screen, 80 millimeter side armor, 70. T72B3 is probably the final advancement in it, in any kind of material. Same composition as the T90, and when you get the T72B fully upgraded, this vehicle can survive even the worst of things. Because when it gets the B3 UBH armor set, the T72B3's UBH armor set is very effective. If you were watching my previous live stream before I had to end it, you would have seen the immense damage it could take from 600 millimeter anti-tank missiles. Because I was firing it from the T62M1. It was literally surviving the blow after blow. Here's the T80 BVM. Looks nice, right? Well, those three little plates of side armor are garbage. I know this tank had another package to the BVM package, because it wasn't just the same thing as carrying the T72B3's standard armor plating of the T90 chassis with a T80 design. But I know the T80 actually had a subsequential armor just like the B3. And I know the Object 685 has also had a slat and reactive armor setup. I also know that the ZPRK2S6 also has a slat and reactive armor setup that can be applied to it. And believe it or not, the Object 279 also had a slat armor setup and a external reactive armor setup for its design. So, pretty easy to identify technology for what it is. Each one had a version that was rather weird, but they were all stripped of said parts when they found that the tanks were useless, so they were stripped of their upgrades. I'll be back. Gotta go to the bathroom. By the way, never believe what you read on paper or whatever the militaries or ministries of any country decides to release. Everyone has tried a shameful experiment on trying to upgrade an old school tank into a newer era. Take a look at the M60 AMBT. Old school tank, but upgraded to a newer era. And then you got the McCurva, the plastic tank, is what I call it. Well, homogeneous by 25. You got the 108 in the front, and then you got the 137 and the 117. When America is hurting for cash, and yes, they are hurting for cash in today's society, not against the United States. I happen to live in this country with its questionable cities that are very shitty to people of color, because that's how you treat you. They don't even gotta have proof, they just treat you like you're a terrorist if you're brown. So keep that in mind, because for some reason I always seem to end up running into all the racist pricks in the universe. When I'm by myself, people show their real colors towards me. The KEW round seems nice and promising with 583, huh? Well, that's not the case. America played up its armor penetration values. That vehicle is not going to be the successor to the Abrams ever in its lifetime. The M60 AMBT is a nice design tank. However, because it's an old tank, it will not do in today's society. Although it is compact versus the M1 Abrams or the M1A2 or an A3 model, which they're not going to ever acknowledge, the vehicle is generally a good design. Don't get me wrong, it's good, it's compact, cost effective, and probably won't cost a fortune to take care of versus the Abrams. You can see it's sitting at 10.0 where it is. Then you have the M1A1 Abrams, and you can take a look at it. Much larger in size. Honeywell ATG gas turbine engine, that's one. Gas turbine engine. 28 mile an hour reverse gear, 47 drive. The Allison X1000 103B. Not bad. It's got decent armor, composition design, and it does think about the driver this time. Initially, in these Abrams tanks, also known as the tin can, which nobody's ever going to acknowledge that, the Abrams tank, also known as the tin can, and the only part that was called the tin can was the driver's seat. Because initially, this right here didn't protect you from Jack Diddley. Originally. Did not protect you. Even if something were to smash into it, it wasn't able to force the rounds down enough, so sometimes they pierce straight through and turn the driver into a milkshake and kind of splatter their bones and everything all over everyone in the back, sometimes severely injuring them, leaving bone fragments in their face. The M1128 Striker. Overall, generally a good unit, but if it gets dinged hard enough, it won't reload. Meaning if you throw something hard enough at it, or if something happens, if this thing falls in a dip or a ditch, it will not reload because something becomes misaligned. I'm sure they've fixed that problem out with it. As for the Mexus 2 armor, I'll tell you something about what I know about this armor. It's a very interesting, intricate armor, but I'm pretty sure inside of the Mexus 2 armor there's also diamond dust involved with creating it. So, you're getting your money's worth if you're sitting in this thing. It's a nice defended vehicle, however not every time it can defend itself from a rocket launcher blast, so don't get your high hopes up on that one in real life. The ADATs. A decent revelation of engineering. The rolled homogeneous armor, these little side panels, why they got just air in between them makes no sense to me. They probably should have put at least a little bit of ERA, so that way it would at least have some effect of detonating high explosives before they went off. If I fire a high explosive round at this thing in the day, like in the game today, if I fired a high explosive round at this thing would immediately explode and open up like a can of worms. It's got a 152mm rocket, but it's got, what was it? It's got dual purpose, so you could technically hit a tank with this, but you're still limited by its function. In order for it not to be, and I quote unquote will tell you this, in order for it to work like a regular missile, you have to make sure you're not locked onto an aerial vehicle when trying to fire it at a ground vehicle, because it might not work out. It has two settings, air and ground, which would basically make it a standard ATGM. 480 heat, 350 heat, 491, 598. The M829A1 is very believable with its armor penetration values. This hasn't really changed too much. This hasn't either. The block right here hasn't changed too much, but it does leave the vehicle exposed when taking a look at the armor. You got 25.4 rolled sitting there. That means it's rolled steel. If you've ever been to a factory, it's rolled steel. Very, very big weak spot right here, under armor, 25.4. If you manage to squeeze off a high explosive round in that section, you might get what you want, which would probably be a heat round, a high explosive round kill. So squeezing it off under on the underside will definitely get you a kill. Just like firing there's enough space to fit a 152mm caliber projectile right here. Fire it off from the KV-2 if you're using a KV-2 or something with equivalent mass, and it goes off right there, it'll definitely take everything out inside of the vehicle. Again, super violent explosion. When there's an ammunition fire, your best chance is just to leave the tank altogether, because the interior, and I'm going to say it like this, the interior of the tank will not last if you have an ammunition fire. When the ammo is on fire on any tank, even though they tell you that the vehicle is going to be fine, do not believe the idiot in the vehicle. He just wants to die there and take you with him. You're better off opening the hatch compartment and the bottom hatch, or the driver's hatch or whatever, or crawling out of the tank, opening the hatch and firing off whatever smoke rounds you have, and then running away from the vehicle. You should probably also leave explosives inside of the vehicle, armed and ready to blow the whole thing up, because there would be no point in recovering it if the interior would burn down anyways. So you'd probably be better off knocking it out altogether. Oh look, they changed it a little bit right here. These should just all be mounted here, all the bullets. But yeah, overall, if you're in the Abrams, doesn't matter what age, what year, what model, don't listen to the guy who's sitting in the chair next to you. He's probably going to get you killed. If he says stay in the vehicle. No, you leave the vehicle and you leave it there while it burns down. And if you have anything like plastic explosives and stuff like that on you, put the plastic explosives in the other ammunition pile, dump it in there, or leave it on top, put it over there in the driver's seat and put one in the center, and then run, bail from your tank, and blow the interior up, destroying the vehicle. Should probably try to cram one inside of the engine room too, so that you could destroy the turbine, so it's not reassemblable. Just helpful advice for those of you who actually sit in these tin cans. Same thing applies to Russia and the United Kingdom. Those tin cans might shrug off a few rounds, but after that, they're gonzo. Oh, sorry about that if anybody was actually tuning in.